About 10 years ago, I was recently divorced and living alone in a one-bedroom apartment. The place was clean and the rent was decent. One of those places that had a doorman. I felt safe here. I was alone and loving it, focused on my career and not on my clingy ex-husband. Things were finally looking up for me. At the time, I was working pretty late at the office and would often stumble into my apartment sleep-deprived in the early hours of the morning and wake up by 6:30, 7-ish to start the day. I started noticing that in the morning my door would be unlocked sometimes. I usually dismissed this as my sleep-dead brain, thinking that the bed looked more appealing than locking the door. Another thing that I noticed since moving in was that I seemed to misplace things more than I used to. Little things like a hairbrush or nail polish, that sort of thing. It wasn't really that big of a deal, just enough to be a slight annoyance in my day. The longer I lived there, the more frequently I seemed to forget to lock the door. At first, it was every once in a while, then it seemed like an almost daily occurrence. More things went missing, things like pictures, shaving razors, and most disturbingly, my underwear. This went on for long enough that I started to get a little paranoid. I started to take the time at night to make sure the door was locked. I got into a habit of every night after I locked the door to turn the handle 3 times and say to myself, "It's locked. It's locked. It's locked." Time after time, I would wake up and the door would be unlocked. One time, I even tried staying up all night to watch the door, but I ended up falling asleep in my chair. I decided that my mind was not reliable enough to stay up all night, so I invested in a video camera. I went all out and bought the fanciest camera that I could get my hands on. So one night, I set the camera up facing the door. I hid the camera under a pile of towels on the floor. I locked the door and went to bed. When I woke up, my apartment looked normal. Nothing missing that I could see. I decided to check the tape. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage, not seeing anything. I was just about to give up when I noticed the handle of the door jitter. Then it slowly crept open. A figure slid through the half-open door and walked towards the camera. It paused, looked around as if it was listening for something, then walked forward into direct view of the camera. I paused the camera. The hairs on my arms and the back of my neck started to rise. I was staring directly into the face of the maintenance man of the building. I could see those big, thick glasses and curly hair. I had no doubt who it was. I played the tape a little more. He looked comfortable as he walked around the apartment. Then he turned and walked towards my bedroom and out of the view of the camera. I didn't know what to do. Sobbing, I called the police. I tried to explain over the phone but couldn't. Soon enough, 2 officers arrived at my doorstep. I told them everything and showed them the tape. I remember seeing the blood drain from their faces. They promised me that I was safe and that they were going to get this guy. I needed to lay down, but didn't want to be alone. One of the officers offered to stand outside my apartment door as I took a nap. As I was laying in bed, unable to sleep, but too drained to move, something kept nagging at me. I laid there for a few minutes, tossing and turning, unable to get comfortable or rest. My mind was racing. Then a realization slowly washed over me and chilled me to the bone. We watched the tape and saw the man enter my home, but we never saw him leave. I froze, then started shaking. I needed to get to the front door. I sat up and looked around the room. I couldn't see anyone. I swung my legs over the side of the bed cautiously. My feet hit the cold wood floor and I felt warm breath on my ankles. I raced out of my apartment as fast as I could and to the safety of the police officer. He called for backup. They found the man under my bed, clutching a knife and a Polaroid camera.
I am a 27-year-old man, and this happened to me about 12 years ago, when I was in high school. We lived in a pretty large house, but my siblings were all away at college or boarding school, so it was only my parents and I in the house. I am a crazy light sleeper. So when I woke up in the dark and saw my alarm clock flashing 3:11 a.m., I wasn't too surprised. However, I was wide awake, not just groggily stirring in my sleep. I lay there, wondering what had woken me when I heard very soft footsteps on the stairs outside my bedroom. The door to my room was parallel to the left side of the bed, and I happened to be laying with my back to the door. When the footsteps approached my door, I thought it must be one of my parents, checking on me for some reason. Then, the doorknob was turned so slowly. Still, I thought they were just trying not to wake me. The door began to open, again, slowly and carefully. It made a creaking noise, no matter how slowly it was opened, so the person finally just shoved it the rest of the way to silence the creak. Still, my naive brain thought it was one of my parents, until they clicked on a flashlight. I froze. Terror flooded me, and I remember that I instantly broke out in sweat. They were behind me, and I was facing away, so they couldn't see my eyes wide open as they shone the beam straight on me. And I always used to think that if something like that ever happened, I would be such a badass, and I would whip out of bed and punch them, attack them, shout, scream, do something. But I could do nothing at all. All I could do was try to keep my breathing deep and even, despite the pounding of my heart, so that the intruder wouldn't know I was awake. After about 10 seconds, they finally moved the light away. I prayed and begged and bartered with anything that would listen to me as the intruder walked around my room, looking at my things. I could vaguely see their shape, large and bulky, like they were wearing two coats. They had a baseball cap on. They didn't shine the flashlight on me again. And after a few minutes, which felt like an eternity, they left my room. I could still hear them, though, walking around the rest of the second floor, through my siblings' empty bedrooms. I was still sweating, still frozen in terror, not knowing what to do. I wanted to grab my phone and call my dad sleeping downstairs. I wanted to call our landline so that the phone would ring and wake my parents up. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to get up and run from my room. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't do any of those things. I was afraid that they would hear me, and I didn't know if they had a weapon and would try to hurt me or my parents. I wouldn't wish such helpless terror on my worst enemy. I don't know how, but I must have passed out from fear, or the adrenaline wore off, and I fell asleep somehow. Because the next thing I knew, it was 6 a.m., and I could hear my parents downstairs. I ran downstairs, and as calmly as I could, I asked them if one of them had been in my room last night. Their faces went blank, and they said no, they hadn't. That was the last straw. I broke down in sobs and told them, then someone was in my room last night, as I begun shaking and teared up. The police were called, even though there was little they could do at that point. Apparently, when my parents woke up, all of the doors to the outside were standing wide open, and there was a duffel bag at the bottom of the stairs. All that was inside was a coil of nylon rope and an empty USB flash drive. I don't want to think about what it was for. The intruder hadn't taken anything, and we have no idea why they left in what appeared to be a hurry. It took me about a week to be able to sleep in my own room, a sanctuary which felt violated and frightening to me now. I carry pepper spray, sleep with a machete next to my bed, and double-check my locks every night. Hopefully this will never happen again, but if it does, hopefully I won't freeze. It's been 12 years, and my most common nightmare is that someone is in my room, standing in the shadows, watching me